In this episode, we're going to make incident response and forensics feel like a set of calm, learnable habits rather than a chaotic scramble that only experts can handle. An incident is any event that threatens the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of systems and data, and in payment environments, the impact can be serious because the environment may handle cardholder data and critical transaction flows. Beginners often imagine incidents as dramatic, obvious breaches, but many incidents begin as subtle signals, like unusual logins, unexpected configuration changes, or a small spike in errors that hides malicious activity. Incident response is the organized process of detecting an incident, containing it, eradicating the cause, and recovering safely, while forensics is the disciplined work of collecting and analyzing evidence to understand what happened. The phrase that deliver clarity matters because the purpose is not simply to react, but to establish truth you can trust, especially when decisions must be made quickly. When the process is designed well, the organization can respond decisively without destroying evidence, causing unnecessary downtime, or misidentifying the root cause. That is how you protect customers, protect the business, and reduce long-term damage. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our Course Companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A strong starting point is understanding why incident response must be planned in advance rather than invented during a crisis. During an incident, people are stressed, systems may be unstable, and information arrives in fragments, so improvisation often leads to mistakes. Those mistakes can include shutting down systems too quickly and losing evidence, allowing too much access while trying to diagnose, or failing to notify the right stakeholders until the situation grows. In payment environments, these mistakes can create regulatory and contractual problems in addition to the technical damage, because there are often reporting requirements and expectations for timely action. Planning ahead allows you to define roles, communication channels, decision authority, and escalation paths before urgency arrives. Beginners sometimes view planning as paperwork, but planning is what turns response from panic into procedure. It also helps you decide what evidence you need and how you will preserve it, because evidence is fragile and can disappear quickly through log rotation, system reboots, or cleanup actions. When a plan exists and people know it, response delivers clarity instead of confusion. One of the most important early concepts is incident classification, because not every alert is an incident and not every incident is the same severity. Classification means defining categories and thresholds, such as when suspicious authentication becomes an access incident, when malware becomes a containment event, or when service disruption becomes an availability incident. The goal is to avoid both extremes of overreacting to every signal and underreacting to real threats. For beginners, it helps to see classification as a decision filter that protects the organization's attention. Clear thresholds and categories also help communication, because teams can speak the same language about what is happening and what is needed. In payment environments, classification often considers whether the cardholder data environment might be affected, whether privileged accounts are involved, and whether external exposure is possible. When classification is disciplined, the team can quickly decide whether to escalate and which playbook to follow. That early decision is the first step toward clarity. Detection and triage connect directly to incident response, because the quality of response depends on the quality of initial information. Triage means collecting the basic facts quickly, such as which systems are involved, what accounts are involved, what the initial indicator was, and whether the activity is ongoing. It also means checking whether the indicator might be a false positive, such as a scheduled maintenance action mistaken for an attack. Beginners sometimes assume triage is about proving everything immediately, but in practice, triage is about achieving enough certainty to take safe actions. In payment environments, safe actions often include protecting the most critical systems first, such as isolating potential compromise near payment flows and preserving logs from key sources. Triage also includes determining whether the incident might involve cardholder data exposure, because that affects urgency and escalation. When triage is methodical, You reduce wasted effort and you reduce the chance of missing a critical clue. A calm tree-off step sets the stage for forensics that deliver clarity rather than speculation. Containment is the next major concept, and it is where many teams accidentally damage their own investigations if they act without a plan. Containment means stopping the incident from spreading or continuing, such as isolating an affected system from the network, disabling a compromised account, or blocking malicious traffic at a boundary. The challenge is that containment can change the environment and can erase traces, so you must balance stopping harm with preserving evidence. Beginners often think the best first action is to turn off the compromised system, but powering off can lose volatile data that might reveal how the attacker operated, such as active network connections or running processes. A disciplined approach often includes capturing key evidence quickly and then containing in a way that preserves what you need. In payment environments, containment must also consider business continuity, because cutting off payment systems can disrupt revenue and customer trust. A plan that includes containment options and decision authority helps teams act quickly without making irreversible mistakes. When containment is thoughtful, you stop the bleeding while still protecting the truth. Forensics begins with evidence preservation, and this is where the phrase "deliver clarity" becomes very real. Evidence preservation means collecting relevant logs, system images, and other artifacts in a way that maintains integrity, so the evidence can be trusted later. It also means documenting what you did, when you did it, and who handled the evidence, because clarity depends on a reliable chain of custody. Beginners sometimes think forensics is only about specialized tools, but the foundational idea is careful handling and careful documentation. Logs can roll over, cloud histories can be overwritten, and endpoint data can change quickly, so timing matters. Evidence should be collected from multiple sources, such as authentication logs, application logs, network device logs, and monitoring systems, because no single source tells the full story. In payment environments, evidence must also help answer whether cardholder data was accessed, exfiltrated, or altered, and that requires looking at both system behavior and data access patterns. When evidence is preserved correctly, later analysis can move from guesses to defensible conclusions. Another crucial concept is scoping, which means determining how far the incident spread and what assets are affected. Scoping is hard because attackers often move laterally, reuse credentials, and touch multiple systems before they are detected. A beginner mistake is to assume the first system you noticed is the only system involved, but in real incidents, that system is often only the first visible symptom. Scoping involves tracing the attacker's actions through logs and connections, identifying which accounts were used, and determining whether other systems show related indicators. In payment environments, scoping must consider whether the cardholder data environment was reachable from the initial foothold and whether segmentation controls were bypassed. This is where good monitoring and good logging pay off, because they allow you to see paths and timelines rather than guessing based on memory. Scoping also guides containment and recovery, because you do not want to restore one system while leaving another compromised. When scoping is disciplined, response produces clarity about the true size of the problem. Eradication is the step where you remove the attacker's foothold and eliminate the cause of the incident, and it must be guided by forensic understanding rather than by wishful cleanup. Eradication can include removing malware, patching exploited vulnerabilities, rotating credentials, removing unauthorized accounts, and correcting misconfigurations that enabled access. The challenge is that if you eradicate before you understand the cause, the attacker may return through the same weakness, or you may miss a persistent mechanism, such as a hidden scheduled task or a backdoor account. Beginners sometimes assume that reinstalling a system fixes everything, but if the underlying credential compromise or exposed service remains, the incident can repeat quickly. In payment environments, eradication must also address the risk of reused secrets and shared access, because attackers often seek long-term access. A disciplined approach ties eradication actions to evidence, so each action has a reason and an expected effect. This evidence-driven cleanup is what turns response into learning rather than whack-a-mole. Recovery is the step where you restore systems to normal operation safely, and it is where clarity matters because rushing can reintroduce risk. Recovery includes bringing systems back online, validating that controls are working, confirming that monitoring is active, and ensuring that affected systems are no longer compromised. Beginners sometimes think recovery is simply turning things back on, but safe recovery includes verification that the environment is stable and that the attacker does not still have access. In a payment environment, recovery also includes confirming that payment functions behave correctly and that sensitive data flows remain protected, because customer trust depends on reliable operations. Recovery often requires coordination across teams, such as operations, security, development, and customer support, so communication plans matter. It also requires careful sequencing, because restoring a dependent system before a core identity service is secured can recreate the compromised path. When recovery is careful and verified, the organization returns to business without carrying hidden compromise forward. Communication and escalation are often the difference between a controlled incident and a confused one, because incidents involve more than technical teams. Clear communication includes notifying the right internal stakeholders, such as leadership, legal, and compliance teams, as well as coordinating with third parties when vendors or service providers are involved. In payment environments, communication may also involve interactions with payment brands or acquiring banks, depending on the nature of the incident, and those expectations often have timelines. Beginners sometimes assume incident response is purely technical, but the business side needs to make decisions about customer impact, service continuity, and external notifications. A good plan defines who can speak externally, what information can be shared, and how updates are delivered internally, so teams do not spread conflicting messages. It also defines escalation triggers, such as confirmed compromise of privileged accounts or evidence of data exfiltration, because those triggers influence urgency and authority. Clear communication is part of delivering clarity, because clarity is not only about technical truth, but also about organizational alignment. Lessons learned is the part of incident response that turns a painful event into a stronger program, and it is often skipped when teams are exhausted. A lessons learned process captures what happened, what worked, what failed, and what changes will prevent repeat incidents. This might include improving monitoring alerts, tightening access controls, adjusting segmentation, strengthening authentication, or improving patch management. Beginners sometimes think the incident ends when systems recover, but a program that delivers clarity continues until root causes are addressed and control improvements are verified. This is also where governance matters, because improvements must be tracked, owned, and completed, not just discussed. In payment environments, lessons learned may also involve updating validation evidence, because changes made after an incident can affect compliance posture. A disciplined lessons learned step creates closure, not just emotional closure, but technical and procedural closure. Over time, this is how the organization becomes less vulnerable and more confident. Incident response and forensics also depend heavily on preparation activities that happen long before any incident, because preparation determines whether you can see and preserve evidence quickly. Preparation includes ensuring logs are collected and retained, ensuring time is synchronized, ensuring access to monitoring systems is available under pressure, and ensuring that tools and procedures for evidence collection are known and tested. It also includes practicing through tabletop exercises or simulations so teams know how to coordinate and who has authority to act. Beginners might assume practice is optional, but practice reduces mistakes during real incidents and reveals gaps in plans. Preparation also includes documenting critical assets and data flows so scoping can happen faster, because you do not want to discover basic system relationships while an attacker is active. In payment environments, preparation should include knowing which systems touch cardholder data and where the boundaries are, because those details guide containment and forensic focus. When preparation is strong, incident response becomes a practiced routine rather than an improvisation. As you bring all these pieces together, preparing incident response and forensics that deliver clarity becomes a disciplined investment in truth, speed, and controlled action. You define incidents and classification thresholds so alerts become structured decisions rather than arguments. You triage quickly to gather essential facts, and you contain in a way that stops harm while preserving evidence needed for understanding. You preserve evidence with integrity and documentation so forensic analysis can be trusted, Then you scope carefully to discover the full reach of the incident rather than assuming the first symptom is the whole story. You eradicate based on evidence, so the cause is removed and persistence is eliminated, and you recover with verification so systems return safely without hidden compromise. You communicate with clear roles and escalation paths so the organization stays aligned, and you complete lessons learned so the incident becomes a driver of improvement. When those steps are planned and practiced, response becomes calm, forensics produces defensible answers, and clarity replaces chaos even in high-stakes payment environments.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.